Laura Ingraham was announcing that, but we don't know if that's actually the case. But we'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully not the case. So I've been hearing about a young man from our Facebook administrator in Iowa, Laura Hupka, who believes that he is going to be the president. She is excited about him. She said he's been spending a lot of time in Iowa and people are loving him. So we invited him in today to see what this is all about because we haven't been to Iowa. Andrew Yang is with us. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
How are
It's
you,
great to be
man?
here, Mark. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Laura. Like coming back to Iowa next week.
Where are you this week? Are you visiting any states this week?
Yeah, I'm heading out west on the Saturday morning, and then to Illinois and Minnesota
Okay.
before heading back to
All right.
Iowa.
How's
Maybe
the
I'll
camp-
see you there, Laura.
How's the campaign going?
Campaign's going great. We were just included on the New York Times, CNN, Washington Post top tier candidate list. I got my head on the Colbert show, the Late Show. So I was
Your
like,
head.
yeah, they had they had these cardboard cutouts of the Democrats who were running, and I was there. So I was like, does this mean I was on the Late Show because I got a cardboard cutout?
That counts.
But really, the proof is really people like Laura in Iowa and in New Hampshire, where I tell people all the time, there's going to be a lot of media noise around this election, but then everyone's going to look to the people of Iowa and New Hampshire to see what's really going on in early 2020.
Wow. So you've been spending a lot of time in Iowa, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
So let's cut to the chase. The bottom line is you're running on the issue of a universal basic income, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So tell us about that.
Well, we just recently celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday, and if you look at it in the final year of his life, he was advocating very, very powerfully for a guaranteed minimum income. In his last book, Chaos or Community, he said, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to fight for as a community. Then unfortunately, his life was taken the following year. But this is an idea that has been with America since the founding of the country. Thomas Paine was for it in its early days, and then after Dr. King's passing, it actually gained headway and passed the U.S. House of Representatives in 1971, and 1,000 economists signed a letter saying this would be great for the economy and society. It's a policy where every American gets a certain amount of money to meet his or her basic needs, and my plan, the Freedom Dividend, is that every American adult would receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, no questions asked, to do whatever you want, make your lives better for yourselves and your family.
Where would that money come from?
Well, here's the wonderful thing is that our economy is now up to $20 trillion, up $5 trillion in the last 12 years. And there are these fantastic innovations that are creating value at really almost unimaginable levels. But the problem is that the technologies that Amazon and Google and Facebook are inventing, the gains are going to a really small number of Americans. And so what we need to do is we need to create a way to harness that innovation and distribute the value to the American people as quickly as possible. So that's where the money comes from in large part.
Folks, what are your thoughts about this universal basic income? Give us a call quickly, 866-99-SIRIUS. We have Andrew Yang in studio. Do other countries do this?
Yeah, if you look at it, you don't even need to look abroad. There's one state that's been doing this for 37 years, where it's wildly popular, was passed by a Republican governor, and everyone in the state of Alaska right now is getting $1,000 to $2,000 a year, no questions asked, from the petroleum dividend. So if you're a family of four, you're getting maybe $8,000, and it's wildly popular, has created thousands of jobs, has improved children's health, has decreased income inequality. And again, this was passed in a deep red state, where in the early 80s, the Republican governor went to the people of Alaska and said, hey guys, a lot of oil in the ground. Who would you rather get the money, the government or you? And then the people of Alaska said, us, please. And he said, I thought you'd say that. And then the money started going out, and now no one can touch it. It's been wildly popular for decades. So,
Wow.
yeah. And so if you dig into it, you realize what is the oil of the 21st century? And I'm here to say technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, self-driving cars and trucks, that's the oil of the 21st century. We can do for all Americans what we're already doing in Alaska.
Yeah. That's fascinating. You founded Venture for America.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your organization and your business.
Sure. So I'll backtrack a little bit. I ran an education company that grew to become quite successful and was acquired in 2009. And that was like the depths of the financial crisis, and I was very despondent about what had happened in the country, where the mortgages and you know, families suffering all around the country. So Venture for America is a nonprofit I started and founded to train young aspiring entrepreneurs to create businesses in places like Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, New Orleans, places that could use a boost. And my distress was being caused by the fact it seemed like all the smart kids were heading to Wall Street or Silicon Valley and not doing something that was actually going to help build up communities. So I started this organization, Venture for America, to help change that. And I was honored by the Obama White House for helping create several thousand jobs in 18 cities around the country. So I spent 7 years doing that. But then while I was in Detroit and Cleveland and these other cities, I saw the aftermath of the decimation of manufacturing jobs. And I realized that we're in the third inning of the greatest economic transformation in the history of the world, which has brought us, unfortunately, Donald Trump as our president. What happened to the manufacturing workers is now happening to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, and soon the truck drivers. That this is not an anomaly. Donald Trump, unfortunately, is a symptom of this incredible transformation that we're undergoing.
Wow. And tell us more about you. Where'd you grow up, man?
Sure. So I'm the son of immigrants. My parents immigrated from Taiwan in the 60s and met in graduate school. My father is a PhD in physics. He has 69 U.S. patents to his name for GE and IBM.
Wow.
He didn't get any money from that. He got like a pat in the back and like a certificate. He got a salary so he could, you know, bring up me and my brother.
Your father's still with you?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
good.
he is. Thank goodness. Yeah, these are the golden years for me and my family because I got two young boys, 6 and 3.
Wow.
One of whom is autistic, but they're both like very, very happy. And then my parents are alive and healthy, and so like these are the years I'm trying to appreciate.
Yeah.
So of course I decided to run for president. Now I never see my family.
so I know. So your parents. What about your mom? What did she do?
My mom worked for a state university of New York as an administrator for years, and now she's a pastel artist. Her work's actually up in like the National Arts Center, both in the U.S. and Taiwan.
So did you grow up here in the state?
Yeah, I grew up in Schenectady, New York, and then Westchester. So I hope I sound like it, but you know, like I just grew up on like, you know, our 3 TV networks and
How old are you?
The rest of it. I'm 44.
44. Okay. All right. Good enough. And what about you? Tell us about your schooling and where you went to school.
Well, I went to high school in New Hampshire, which turns out to be handy if you run for president.
Okay, I'm sure.
So I'm going back to speak next week
Okay.
in New Hampshire. And then I went to Brown University. I studied economics and political science. And then I did not know what to do, so I went to law school, which is what you do if you didn't know what to do. So anyone who dodged that law school bullet, hats off. And if you went, it's cool too. So I went to law school here in New York City at Columbia. And then I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 months, and I thought it was a terrible job.
You know, more and more people say that now. They go to law school and then they realize they don't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, that's pretty normal.
It is getting kind of normal, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's getting, the practice of law is getting more and more punishing too. It's like, you know, and I've got friends who are investing tens of millions of dollars in companies that are going to automate away a lot of legal services. So when you graduate from law school, you used to be assured of like a high-paying job to help pay off your crazy debt load. And now you have the crazy debt load and no high-paying job. It's a really terrible formula for many, many people.
So what made you decide, though, to put everything on the line and run for president?
Well, so imagine getting medals and awards for helping create several thousand jobs and then realizing that millions of jobs are going to evaporate and that Donald Trump was a symptom, not the disease. And that for whatever reason, no one's talking about the disease. I mean, I was despondent about the state of the country. And so then I said, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a problem solver. How do you solve the biggest problem in decades, which is that technology is transforming our economy in ways that it's going to make it harder and harder for people to get by. Yeah. Now, that's a mammoth problem. And unfortunately, our politicians are not up to addressing this problem. I went to them before I decided to run for president, and I was like, hey, guys, we're in the third inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country. What are we going to do? And the answers I got were somewhere between disappointing and horrifying, frankly. Like, if you talk to most politicians about this, here are the answers I got. 1, we can't talk about that. 2, we should study that further. And I wrote a book about it, and I have all the data. Can go into it at length. 3, we should educate and retrain Americans for the jobs of the future. Now, that last talking point sounds intelligent, and rational and compassionate until you dig into the numbers and you find that the effectiveness rate of government-funded retraining programs are approximately 0 to 15%. And fewer than 10% of American workers qualify for those programs anyway. It's not like when a shopping mall closes, there's an army of government officials there to retrain all the people that used to work there.
Right.
So it's irresponsible to talk about solutions that aren't real. It's irresponsible to talk about solutions that we're demonstrably not going to be able to use for most displaced Americans. And as we're sitting here talking today, people are suffering. Our labor participation rate is down to 63%, the same levels as El Salvador and the Dominican Republic. And 1 in 5 prime working age American men has not worked in the last year. And this is year 10 of an expansion where things are supposed to be great.
Recession, right?
Yeah, so it's just going to get darker and nastier. And so that's why I'm running for president.
And that's why when we look at the unemployment rate being down, it's really somewhat of a misnomer.
Oh yeah,
Because
it's government misinformation. I mean, like when I'm president, we're going to change that data and make it so that it integrates labor force participation and even levels of engagement with work. Because how many people like their jobs right now? That percentage is very low. We have to try and start moving it in the right direction. Because people do more important work when they actually feel like they're working on something they value.
Yeah. Half past the hour, folks. 866-99 series. Andrew Yang. Let's get a few calls. Well, first let me ask this though. Fundraising.
Yes.
How are you raising money? Do you need money? Are you rich? You don't need money? You financing this yourself or what?
Oh, well, I put in a bit of seed money, but we're funded by ordinary Americans across the country, like Laura. Our average donation is only $11, so I joke that our fans are even cheaper than Bernie's. But I'm happy to say we're getting donations from tens of thousands of ordinary Americans around the country because people realize that we need a new economic vision, one that puts us first, the humans of this country. We're the owners and shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world, and there's no reason we should be suffering like this.
Name recognition. You got some big stars you're up against in the Democratic primary. How are you going to compete with that? You got Elizabeth in, you got Kamala announced yesterday, Kirsten, Sherrod Brown is going to be there in Iowa next week. You got some big names. How are you going to overcome that?
I hate to say it, but for the average American, they only have like a vague sense of most of the people you just named. Like I'm actually tied with Kirsten Gillibrand right now in Iowa as an example. In the last CNN poll, like most Americans are not really keyed in that closely. So we definitely have a lot of headroom where like I need to become more of a household name. But when I talk about these issues, people listen to me and they say, you don't sound like any politician I've ever heard. Right. You're talking about things that like I sense are true, but for whatever reason, like we're not talking about. And I'm suggesting putting $1,000 a month in the hands of every American adult, which to me is a very necessary step, but it's a much more dramatic, impactful solution than other politicians are talking about. And when people hear that too, they're like, is that too good to be true? And then their wheels start turning and being like, wait, like it's in Alaska? Like all you need is 51% of Congress? It passed the House of Representatives twice in the 70s. And they realize that cars and trucks are going to start driving themselves. Their Main Street stores are closing. Like, we have to make big moves. And so I'm growing every day. My campaign's growing every day. And I'm not growing.
I agree with you. Something Dr. King would have supported. Unlike the wall, they tried to say he'd support the wall.
Yeah, that's craziness. But I'm going to read a quote from Dr. King. It's in my book.
Please do.
I have
receipts. That's called receipts, y'all. He's got receipts.
Well, here we go. Martin Luther King Jr., 1967. I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income. And he goes on to say that instead of trying to fix education and housing, you just give people money, and then people will fix education and housing with the resources that they have.
Yeah. And that's still kind of a free market, isn't it? That the other side claims that they're in favor of.
Yes.
Except for individuals. They just want it for corporations, obviously.
And this is one reason why I can win, is that many conservatives and libertarians really love this plan. Like, they're conservative economists who love the idea of people having autonomy and economic freedom. What they don't like is bureaucracy and what they feel like is government making people's decisions for them. So putting money into people's hands is actually something that someone said it's not left or right, it's forward. We can make this happen because Americans sense that we need solutions that actually empower us.
Let's go quickly. Andrew's in New York. Andrew, God bless you. Good morning. Get woke, get ready for impeachment. You're on the air with Andrew Yang running for president. Go right ahead. Please, Andrew.
Hey, Mr. Yang, good morning. Actually, I'm calling right up the street from Schenectady. I'm in South Colony, where I reside, and a couple questions, about this plan. I think when people hear free money, they get really excited. But if it's $1,000 per, you said American. Can you define? Are you speaking of an American citizen or somebody who is in America?
I'm saying American citizen. I believe we need to create a path to citizenship for people who are here and undocumented. I'm the son of immigrants, and naturally very, very positive on the impact that immigrants have on our country. But realistically, if you're going to start issuing a dividend of $1,000 a month, it needs to be for citizens initially. After people go through a long-term path to citizenship and become citizens, then they too would be eligible.
Okay, and then secondly, what are the costs to administer such a program? I mean, obviously you have to have brick and mortar buildings, you have to have staff. The staff is going to have pensions. There's going to be a lot of other costs involved. So what percentage of my rough number is about $4 trillion a year for this. So what percentage above that would have to account for the administrative costs of this?
Well, the great thing is that this program is lighter weight and easier to administer than any other existing government program, which has to go around and try and confirm your income, your work status, whether you're complying with program requirements. Here, because it's an unconditional dividend, all we need to do is verify your identity, citizenship, means of payment, and confirm you're still alive, honestly. And it's much less expensive than you're suggesting, because if you look at it, right now, about half of Americans are receiving direct government payments, and so the infrastructure is already in place for many, many Americans, and as a result, the cost is a lot less than $4 trillion a year. It's closer to half that, and a lot of that money is just going to go right back into our Main Street economy, to car repairs, food for our kids, tutoring, the occasional night out, and then we get a lot of that back in economic growth and new jobs. It also saves us money on many of the things we're currently breaking the bank on. I was in New Hampshire, and a prison guard there said to me, we should pay people to stay out of jail, because when they get in jail, we end up spending tens of thousands of dollars on their incarceration. And this is a prison guard. A prison guard is actually talking trash about the system.
And then my last question about this is, will it be indexed against any type of inflation over time?
Yeah, it would be indexed against inflation, but you have to look at it. Technology is actually keeping inflation low for most consumer goods. The painful aspects of inflation right now are education, healthcare, and housing, and those three things are dysfunctional markets that aren't functioning right because they're regulated in certain ways. So it would be indexed to inflation. That's right.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
Best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much. Stuart's in Kentucky. Stuart, God bless you. Good morning. Get ready for impeachment. You're on air with Andrew Yang. Go right ahead. Running for president.
Good morning. Yes. Basic income's a great idea that could eliminate poverty and grow the economy, create jobs. And like you said, it does have some broad political support. I know that my libertarian brother is a big fan of yours. He was telling me about your campaign before I had ever heard of you months ago. So I think this is a great idea, and I hope you'll be able to really bring attention to it. One thing it could help to do is change work. Like if we're technological advancement makes us wealthier, as you know it, as you mentioned, and we could, for example, reduce the work week to help resolve the problem of not having enough jobs for everyone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There were predictions earlier this decade that we'd be looking at like a 20-hour work week by now because our productivity would be so high. But instead, Americans are working longer work weeks, and there's no reason for it. Many studies have shown that the extra hours are not adding to our productivity in any meaningful way. So we should be looking at shorter work weeks. That's 100% right. And the fact that we're working ourselves literally to unhealth and death in some cases is a sign of how sick our economy has become. So you're spot on.
Thank you, Stuart. Good words. Jeanette's in New Orleans. Jeanette, God bless you. Good morning. Get ready for impeachment. You're on there with Andrew Yang. Jeanette, running for president. Jeanette, did we lose you? Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Can you
Yes,
hear
go right
me?
ahead. Can you hear okay?
Okay.
You can put those on.
Andrew, I haven't heard of you before. I'm a 62-year-old nurse, RN. I've worked 40 years. I make less money now than I did in the 80s. I'm looking at Social Security, which I hope they don't take away. I'm more interested. I like the $1,000 like the Alaska people get, but what I'm really, really interested in listening to you is you talking about problem solving with our economy and our people moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jeanette, and thank you for the work you do caring for people every day. You know, you're not alone in having your wages stagnate or even go down since the 80s. This economy is really dehumanizing us and devaluing us in various ways. And we do need to solve the big problems. One problem is the industry that you're working in. I think that healthcare costs have spiraled out of control for many American families. I'm for Medicare for all because I think that's the only way to get the incentives right and get the costs down. Right now, we're spending twice as much as other developed countries on worse results, and it's because our incentives are all wrong. People are incentivized to do things that rack up revenues and avoid getting sued, whether or not they think it's in the best interest of the patient. Now, you know what's interesting, Jeanette, is that people don't feel that way at all about nurses. Like, everyone knows that nurses are just doing what's right all the time, and that it's like other.
Well, can I tell you two things I've seen transpire since I got out of school in '79? We never were. We didn't have charges on things. Like, I can remember the first time I saw a charge sticker on a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
That was in the '80s.
Yeah.
So we weren't involved in insurance. We weren't involved in the financial aspect of it. We just took care of people. The other thing that's happened is I'm a diploma graduate, which was affiliated with the hospital. My loan when I got out of school was $33.22 for like 5 years.
Wow.
These people are coming out of school now with thousands and thousands of dollars of debt just to get their RN.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
It is crazy and it's immoral. Among the problem-solving plans I have is a giant student loan forgiveness plan that would be an economic stimulus.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, young people who are coming out of school, they should be starting families, they should be buying homes, they should be buying cars, they should be starting businesses. And instead they're servicing $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. And college school, as you say, has gotten 2.5, 3 times more expensive in the last several decades. And it has not gotten any better. It's not like you go there and you're like, oh, wow, this is like, no wonder it's 300% more expensive. Not like that. And so I dug into the reasons, Jeanette, why it's gotten more expensive. It's not professors. It's not even facilities. It's administrators, where the ratio of administrators to students has gone up 250% in the last 25 years, which is shockingly the same level as the cost has increased. So as president, first I'm going to start a giant student loan forgiveness program as an economic stimulus because money in people's hands will grow the economy much more than if you plow it to banks. Number two, yes, and we printed $4 trillion for the banks in the last stimulus. So anyone who thinks like, oh, where's the money come from? Where's the money come from? You know, as soon as the banks need money, then we find the money. So we can make this move. The second big thing is we have to rationalize the cost of education for our young people, and the way to do that is I'm going to tie federal aid to your administrator to student ratio. And so if you have tons and tons of administrators, you can be like, you can do that. You're just not going to get federal money or access to federal loans. The schools will scream bloody murder, but then they'll start bringing their ratios down, and then they'll realize that it had nothing to do with the student experience. I don't want to fault these schools too much because I've run a nonprofit that I started. And when you're a nonprofit, your propensity is to hire more people. That's just what growth looks like. But then before you know it, you end up with just like people coming out of your ears and like, you know, a vice dean of every department, and no one really knows what's going on. So we need to solve the big problems and call it like we see it, because, you know, there are good people who are doing great work, but they're stuck in a system, the healthcare system, the educational system.
Exactly.
That's making their incentives all wrong. We can do better.
Yeah.
Well, but my sister told me this was unethical. We were getting bonuses. Our company gets bonuses if our patients meet passing numbers on their lab tests and stuff. And my sister said essentially that's unethical because you're getting a bonus based on somebody else's behavior, not your behavior.
You know, I don't know about any guidelines around that. I'd have to look into it. I mean, that doesn't sound so bad if you're like helping patients exercise and stay healthy and like have their blood tests be better. On the other hand, it might end up having like really messed up incentives. Like maybe you pay more attention to some patients because you think you might.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Jeanette,
it takes the humanistic part of it out of there.
Jeanette, thank you for your call.
Well, look, I'm going to buy your book.
Thank you,
Hold on,
Jeanette.
I have a question though. Since she's
Okay.
a nurse, we're not at a threshold where we may at some point be automating nurses, will we?
So about 44%.
Oh, no.
No, nurses would be one of the last to go. So 44% of jobs fall into a category of repetitive manual or repetitive cognitive. So a lot of what we think of as white collar work falls into rules based work that can be automated, like accounting, and being an insurance broker, like white collar work. And then the blue collar work, it's stuff like being a truck driver, being a cashier, being a warehouse shelver. A lot of food service stuff too can be automated. Like you can not just the front of house self-serve kiosk touchscreen, but also we have like robot burger flippers and pizza makers now.
But what has happened is nurses get out of nursing school. They don't want to work in the hospitals and do the grunt work. They want to go be nurse practitioners and nurse anesthetists and get away from actually bedside nursing.
Yeah, I mean the same is true with
very,
doctors.
very hard.
Like we have a massive shortage of primary care physicians for the same reason. Like they rack up this debt and then they're like, hey, maybe I can become an anesthesiologist and like put people to sleep.
Exactly.
That seems better than moving to a rural area and like being a family doctor. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So the debt is causing perverse incentives for our practitioners too. Like our country's gotten overrun by market logic and money to an extreme that it is truly dehumanizing. And Jeanette, you're seeing it where even the way you treat patients now is getting flavored by, like prices on Band-Aids.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeanette,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette.
And I'm glad I was listening to the radio this morning. Y'all have a good day.
Well, you should be listening to the radio every morning.
Work. Thank
All right,
you.
Well, I appreciate you. You can't automate talk show hosts, can you?
No.
Because that's not repetitive cognitive, even though Brittany thinks I'm repetitive, but it's not. It's not repetitive cognitive. I got to,
Also among the saved, though I will say, if you look this up online, there is an AI news anchor in China based on a real life one. It just like reads the news like all the time.
Yeah, just doing the news read. Stick around for a few more minutes?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, we're going to stick with Andrew. That's the good news. Bad news is Nathan Phillips is exhausted. He's reached out to me. We're going to try to reschedule him. That's the indigenous elder who the MAGA hat kids were confronting at the Lincoln Memorial. We're going to see if we can get him in here on tomorrow. But Andrew's still here. We're going to take more of your calls quickly. Go ahead and get on board. 866-99-SIRIUS. We're streaming so you can see him in the flesh. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, Make It Plain. And on Instagram, Minister with 2 T's. So check us out there as well. We'll be right back with Andrew Yang running for president, folks. Don't go away. This is MIP. Back in the studio with Andrew Yang. We got about 6 minutes left. We'll get to your calls. But Andrew was just telling me something off mic about a family so inspired, or a group so inspired by your UBI proposal.
Yeah, so a Christian couple in Georgia has said that in honor of Dr. King and my campaign, they're going to give $1,000 a month to an individual or family in South Carolina. And so we're looking for individuals or families in South Carolina that could use $1,000 a month, which I suspect most anyone could, which is sort of the point of the campaign. So if you know someone who resembles that, please do go to yang2020.com and just send an email to info@, and we'll start taking submissions. But this Christian family reached out to me just a few weeks ago and said, we're so inspired that we want to give the Freedom Dividend to someone in South Carolina in honor of Dr. King.
Wow. That's it. So go to yang2020.com. That's the website. The Twitter is @AndrewYangVFA for President Andrew Yang VFA. Go there. Also on Instagram, and we're on our social media now, so you can see him. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain. You can share that with everyone, and also on Instagram, Minister with 2 T's. Let's get a couple of the calls, and I know the voters want to talk to you and the listeners. Dave's in Washington. Dave, God bless you. Good morning. We'll get ready for impeachment. You're on the air with Andrew Yang. Go right ahead.
Yeah, hey, Andrew. First, I don't want you to misunderstand my question, because I believe everything you're saying, and I think it is the best idea for America in the future. But, politics in America is politics. And just building on, I think, what Mark was alluding to earlier, with all these candidates in the field running for the Democratic Party nomination, eventually it's going to get to the point to where somebody is going to say, look, this has not been in the Democratic Party platform. All right, this is not really a Democratic Party thing. So I guess I have a two-part question, but it's a single question. Are you willing to push this idea of a universal basic income and maybe universal health insurance in the party platform? And two, if it doesn't work out, are you willing to run as an independent or a libertarian?
Well, thanks for your question. I 100% believe that both universal basic income and Medicare for all should be and will be part of the Democratic Party platform. I think that the Democratic Party actually is right now fielding new ideas because they realize that we have lost touch with the American people and that we need to improve people's lives. And for whatever reason, people do not think the Democratic Party is necessarily focusing on things that will improve our lives. In terms of the independent run or libertarians, I think that this policy will appeal to Americans from every part of the political spectrum. But if you look at the realities on the ground, the best way to make this happen is through the Democratic Party. And I'm committed to running for president as a Democrat. The other thing is, I really, really, really want to beat Donald Trump. And so the last thing I would do is draw votes from people who might otherwise be voting against our current president, who just needs to go.
Thank you, Dave. But on that point, though, you've been talking a lot about the positive. What about the negative? I mean, it's going to be impossible to run a campaign in 2020 if he's even still in the White House without hitting him, because he's going to hit you.
Sure.
And he does the name calling and other stuff. And frankly, I think we're too nice sometimes. So, what's your plan to stick it to him? I say to people around the country, the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. And we know what his nickname for me is going to be, and we're already laughing about it. What is it?
It's going to be Comrade Yang.
Yeah.
But
so has he used that yet? He hasn't said it yet.
He hasn't used it yet. It's coming, though. We know. So
and we know, and it's probably going to be a slur. He's going to come up with a slur. I mean,
Comrade's vaguely racist, I think.
It is. But that's what he's going to do.
Just racist enough. So. But the fact is, there have been people who voted for Donald Trump in Iowa and New Hampshire who have come up to me and said, I voted for Donald Trump and I'll 100% vote for you. Okay. Because I'm calling out the same problems he was calling out, but I have much better solutions.
You actually have
solutions. Yeah, my solutions aren't
I don't think he had any
solutions. Turn the clock back and build a wall and all this garbage.
I wish the Democrats were a little more vocal. I mean, Clyburn is trying to be, but he's just the whip. Because they actually saying something intelligent, and I think you would even embrace, The solution, if there is a need for wall at all, it's a smart wall, not this physical wall.
Yeah,
and I think the Democrats need to campaign on that, even in this shutdown, even better to show, fool, we have a wall. We have a plan for a wall, fool, not a physical one, because we don't need that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were looking into how to secure the southern border, and a big part of the southern border is the Rio Grande. And so, like, environmentalists would like this, where, like, we have to actually try and make the Rio Grande more like robust and like healthy as a waterway, and that actually also coincidentally like helps make our border more secure. So I mean, that's not a physical wall. I mean, a lot of the border is a river.
All that's important. All that's important. Let's do this, folks. We're about to sign off on the radio. Go on the stream. We're going to keep Andrew maybe 5 more minutes or less, because I want to get the rest of these calls. If you want to hear or you want to call, go to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, make it plain. 866-99-SIRIUS, still the number. Minister with 2 T's on Instagram. Those of you listening on Sirius XM Progress, we're going to leave you now in about 30 seconds, but then you can continue to hear and see Andrew on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain. But I want to get a couple of more calls in, and we thank you all for listening on the radio. Jeff's in Florida. You on with Andrew Yang. Go right ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go right ahead. God bless you.
I just want to say you're the first person running for president that's talked about the economic catastrophe that's coming down the pike and dealing with automation. I work in that field. I deal with IA and predictive analytics and machine learning, and
it's
when
real.
I tell people
what's coming,
I tell people the things that are going to be replaced, they're like, they have no idea. We're talking about millions of people being out of work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Millions. We need to get our acts together. We need to get our heads out of the sand as fast as possible. And I will say, just like you're saying, the more someone knows, the more concerned they are.
So the universal basic income would also help to address that.
Yeah, it's the only feasible way to address it. And unfortunately, our politicians are going to talk about education and retraining like it works, which it does not in most cases. We need to get with a program and just start transferring value directly into Americans' hands and help people adapt and move, physically even move. Because if you look at it around the country, our economy's dynamism is at multi-decade lows. We're starting fewer businesses, moving less, getting married less, having fewer kids. Like everything is going down the wrong way.
So So in addition to universal basic income, though, and I hear people talk about education and retraining, if automation is replacing my skill and replacing so many other skills, maybe even half of them, what would I do?
Yeah, indeed. And our schools aren't designed for it. So to the extent there's an opportunity, there are a lot of middle skill technical jobs that will be with us for a long time. Like you're not going to have an air conditioning repair robot, or there's a lot of fine motor work that's much easier for people to do. So we need to start moving towards those opportunities as fast as we can.
All right, Jeff, thank you for your call. Let's get one more. Jermaine's in Pennsylvania. Jermaine, God bless you. Good morning. We'll get ready for impeachment. Go right ahead.
Hey, good morning. Andrew, it's good hearing you. This is my first time hearing of you, but I'm glad to get a chance to listen to you. I'm definitely going to do more research on you. My question is, you had originally said as to the way to fund the universal income would more or less be through the companies of the allocation of funds like Google, Amazon, and the likes. How would you get them to either, one, relinquish that power of the allocation of funds or the control of the technology?
Sure. So I'm happy to say I have a lot of support in Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley CEOs and engineers are humans and parents and Americans. And you go to them and say, hey, are you automating people's jobs? They're like, yep. And they're like, hey, you want to do something about it? And then about half of them are like, yeah, I would like to do something about it, because I'm not a total asshole. Like, like I'm just a man in a lab, like inventing stuff. And so I speak to CEOs and technologists, not all of them, but a lot of them are on board with my plan, because they think that it's going to be very bad for the country and even innovation if people are destitute and getting pushed out of the workforce in record numbers. So, right. That this isn't like what I call it's enlightened self-interest. It's in everyone's enlightened self-interest to start owning what the future must look like.
Yeah, and getting away. So much of what we do is reactive as human beings in general. And we aren't prepared for what's coming, and we stay in this, and that's part of the problem. We're in these routine, and so we can't adjust. We can't pull back and say that's the problem with climate change.
Yeah.
I mean, we are messed up because we there's not the forward thinking. Everything's reactive. Everything's last minute. That's human culture right now.
Well, I want to say that universal basic income is the first step towards addressing climate change, because what we're going to do is we're going to reverse everyone's mindset of scarcity, which is like, oh, like I don't care about the penguins, I can't pay my bills. So like to if you can pay your bills, then you say, hey, we should worry about climate change. Like, yeah, like
That's a good point.
no, I kid. So step one. The other thing is if you have universal basic income, a lot of people will move towards communal living and minimalism and
Right.
sustainable farming and like a bunch of other things. So
Right.
like but the problem right now is that if you go towards climate change, people are like, oh, you're gonna take my money, like, you know, like I don't have enough money. So
Right.
so
Right.
this is the big step towards abundance, which is something that you know, I believe Dr. King and others advocated for.
So let me be totally out the box with you, if I could. So I'm an African American. So we're talking about universal basic income. Obviously, Dr. King was in favor of that. But there is a school of thought within our culture, I'm sure you've heard of it, that African Americans deserve reparations in particular.
Yep.
So if there were a universal basic income, would you agree or would you consider African Americans maybe getting a little bit extra because of the history of our experience?
Yeah, so I am in favor of something that would help recognize the African American experience. But I want to say that by the numbers, if everyone's getting $1,000 a month, that's going to go further for people who are in marginalized communities that right now have less access. And you can sell it as like, hey, everyone's getting the same thing. But the fact is, $1,000 is more meaningful to, you know, someone who like right now is struggling to make ends meet than it's going to be for people in other communities. So I understand the moral case for reparations, and I agree with it. But I think politically we have to be real, where it would be very, very difficult to sell like a dividend for everyone that advantage some people over others. And in this case, happily, if you say, look, we're treating everyone the same, the impact is actually disproportionately positive to women who are doing more of the unrecognized work in our society that's uncompensated, to African Americans who have lower access to savings and economic opportunities because of institutionalized racism and many other things. So it's going to have a disproportionate impact, and I believe that is going to be something that we can celebrate.
All right. Very good. Website, once again.
So if you want to help, yang2020.com, and if you just follow us or give us $2 or whatever it is, that's actually really helpful and meaningful, because the Democratic primary debates are in June, in 5 months, and they're going to determine who's on the debate stage based upon number of supporters. So go to yang2020.com and help Laura and me make this case to the American people that we can change things to work for us, the humans, the owners, the shareholders of this country.
I'm trying to figure out, how do they determine the number of supporters? Based upon what? I mean,
based upon number of donors, generally.
It's just, okay, based on number. That's interesting. Yang2020.com, folks. What's going to be your debate demeanor? Are you going to be like a hard-hitting kind of guy? Are you going to come at people, or are you going to be polite? What you going to do, man?
I'm just going to try and talk like a human being. Like I can't stand these politicians where you could tell they know they're going to get like 6 minutes of mic time or air time, and they just like cram in their talking points no matter what. Like I find that stuff super irritating. And they try to get a zinger in there. Like that stuff is, you know, it's the worst of politics. So my plan is just to show up and try and make the case to the American people.
Okay. All right. Yang2020.com, folks. Andrew Yang, we appreciate him coming. Always appreciate it. A lot of people call on the phone, but we really appreciate people coming in studio this way. Pleasure to meet you, man. Good luck to you. This won't be the last time we talk.
Oh, yeah. I hope not.
Go. Count on that. Count on that. All right, folks. If all minds are clear, thanks for tuning in. We'll get Nathan Phillips back in here. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.